Well, good afternoon and welcome to our October Ranching One webinar presented by AgTrust. Today, you will hear from the owner and founder of Data Genie LLC, a comprehensive data and genomic management service dedicated to helping agricultural operations succeed. With a passion for engaging with producers of all breed affiliations, Leoma provides valuable insights on incorporating DNA and genomic testing technology to optimize genetic potential within herds. Before we start, join me in a short message from AgTrust.
When your passion is agriculture and a rural way of life, you need a partner who understands. That partner is AgTrust Farm Credit, formed from two trusted farm credit associations. Our mission is to provide personalized financing tailored for full and part-time farmers, ranchers, agribusinesses, and rural homeowners. And because we live in the communities we serve, AgTrust Farm Credit is here to help you succeed.
At this time, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. Leoma Donsbach enjoys working alongside customers to submit, provide, and deliver the best quality data and information possible. During her time at California Polytechnic State University, while living and working at the beef unit serving as the bull test secretary, Leoma discovered her love for genetics and data management. After college, she started her career at the American Simmental Association, and during her 12 years at ASA, Leoma served in various roles but found her niche in DNA and data collection for total herd reporting. Her primary focus was to educate producers on what programs are best suited for their operation and about their short-term and long-term goals. Based on these interactions with producers, Leoma identified a need and a potential business opportunity, leading to the creation of Data Genie LLC in 2015. As always, if you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them in the chat box or the Q&A box, and we will make sure we get those answered at the end. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Leoma.
Well, thank you, Bryn, for that great introduction, and thank you for not mentioning the year I graduated, because that's been the big thing lately, is the teasing for us oldies but newbies. So I am excited to be sharing with you all today and talking about something that I am passionate in, which is investing in bulls and how you can take your dollars, because everyone's got a budget, and invest those in the best possible way to lead to genetic progress within your herd. So as Bryn mentioned, I started my business back in 2015, and throughout the years have evolved it into what it is today, which is we have 75 clients. We manage about 18,000 females between 7 different beef breed associations. We have branched out in the last couple years. Kind of an exciting space is the commercial cow-calf area, and we're assisting commercial cow-calf producers with utilizing the tools that have always just kind of been available for seed stock producers that are now available to you as well. So if you're a commercial cow-calf producer on this webinar and you would like more information afterwards, please feel free to reach out. The TSRCA has been kind enough to put up my contact information, and we hope that we'll cruise through this today and I won't do death by PowerPoint. Look forward to the interaction at the end. So to start us off, every bull purchase, in my opinion, starts with the decision tree. And the decision tree is your seed stock provider and the breed of bulls that you want represented within. And so I think it's important here to note that you can choose any bull from anyone that you want to purchase from. That is your prerogative. That is your right. All of us being out here in this unique industry. But let's think of it a different way, as a genetic investment. So just because you've bought bulls from Todd Smith for 20 years, does that mean that you should continue buying bulls from Todd Smith? Does that add value to your operation? And let's start treating whether we have 5 cows, whether we have 1,000 cows. It is a business and it needs to be treated as such. So that next decision goes into, how do we use EPDs, which is better known as expected progeny differences and indexes, to help us make our decisions. I think that whoever named EPDs expected made a little bit of a hiccup because it should have been estimated, because that is a better description of what they do for us, is it's an estimate and a prediction of how that animal is going to have offspring that perform. Last but not least is our two most critical, which is probably visual appraisal and price. I put visual appraisal at this spot in the decision tree because I think that if you're purchasing from a seed stock provider who's done their due diligence, that visual appraisal, like they already should have been culled for feet, structure, like anything that is not going to help someone progress in their herd, that should have already been taken out of even for your consideration. But as we well know, sometimes you show up on sale day and that has not been done. So you still need to do your due diligence either through video or visual in person. Last but not least, price and budget. I wish we all had that champagne budget, but most of us are working on a beer budget these days, depending on what area of the country you're in. And so price comes into play. We would all love to buy lot ones across the country, but at the end of the day, maybe lot 220 is really what I need for me and my cow herd. So let's kick this off with talking about choosing a seed stock source. As I mentioned, I have great friends who've been in this business a really, really long time. It does not necessarily mean that I want to continue purchasing bulls from that individual, not because they're not doing a great job, but I have to be able to move my herd forward in the progression that I want to. The bull that I use this year, or the bull that you're purchasing this year, if we lay this out and look at it, I'm a very visual person. Do you see that number to the far right? It says 2040. The bulls that I put out with my cows this year are still going to be impacting me up until 2040 and beyond. That's just the genetics I chose this year. So when we talk about making an investment, we need to think about it in terms of that. It's no longer, hey, I'm just going to go buy a bull. I don't have the budget this year to really make that big genetic investment. Well, maybe we need to think of it as, do I still want the bull that I purchased impacting my cow herd until 2040? And that's the way to look at this. One other key thing when choosing a seed stock source, when they say match your seed stock source to your environment, one thing to consider is this is what they're talking about. We can have someone who does a tremendous job management wise and maybe doesn't quite have the genetics, but their management makes up for what the genetics lack, because genetics, depending on the heritability of the trait, gives us, almost half the equation, but environment can make up the other half. So sometimes when we go out and we choose a bull and we bring him home and that bull kind of falls apart, we want to be quick to blame, other factors. But the fact of the matter is, sometimes maybe our management style does not match the environment that we pulled that bull from. And so we really need to be matching apples to apples or trying to mimic our seed stock provider and their management style to really mimic the results from that. So if you take nothing else from anything else we say today, please, that is what people mean when they say match environment, is choosing and providing from seed stock sources that you can match that management style. And of course, we all want the bottom one, which is excellent genetics and excellent management, but sometimes it's just not what we get. Every bull buying purchase starts with your breeding objectives. So sitting down at your kitchen table, having that conversation with either yourself, if you're the decision maker, or the family about what are we choosing a bull to do? And what does our cow herd look like today? So being very honest with yourself, taking your emotion out of it. If you've been buying cattle from different sources, and so your cow herd's kind of made up of a few different genetic lines, you need to look at what bull will best complement those females and what do you think that value, put a value on it. Just like when we're going to buy a vehicle or we're going to buy a trailer, what is the value that you can put and the weight that you can put on that bull buying purchase? So this should be the fundamental start of any bull sale season. Where are we at? What are we looking to purchase? And how can EPDs help us get there? So moving on to that next part of the decision-making tree, we've already picked our seed stock source. We picked the breedables that we want to go with. How can we now look at EPDs and use those as a tool to make this very, very important decision? And what we like to forget is the EPD is not necessarily evaluating that animal itself. It's evaluating the ability for that animal to go on and produce superior genetics. I am not an animal geneticist. I'm not an animal breeder by trade. So this is the only equation you will see me put up today. And the basic premise behind all EPDs is P, which stands for your phenotype, which is something that we can measure. So that would be birth weights, weaning weights, yearling weights, ultrasound information, carcass data, the cows having calves. So whether she had a calf or didn't have a calf, stayability. Then you have G, which stands for genetics. And now it also incorporates genomics. So that G kind of double dips into genetics and genomics. And then last but not least, which is a very important piece of the puzzle, we have environment. So environment is a big impact on us. You might have some of the greatest genetics in the world, but you guys right now in Texas, a lot of Texas is under a little bit of a drought situation. And so when we're under drought, just like we were 4 years ago here in Montana, I can have optimal genetics and those animals might still underperform because the environment is just not matching the needs of that animal to perform optimally. So we have to kind of factor all of this in and look at an evaluation of that animal from the whole. So not from the individual. EPDs look at the whole of that operation. If we think back to algebra, which for some of us was a little bit longer than others, how do we solve an equation like this? If we have phenotype and we know the genetics and the genotype of the animal, how much easier did it just become to solve for E? So a seed stock provider who is reporting phenotypes, doing genomic data through their association, that association can do a really good job at evaluating their cattle because they're able to solve for E and for that environment piece. So speaking of genetics and genomics, these get used in tandem with one another. And sometimes as producers, we don't stop and explain that terminology. This is my best breakdown for you of the difference between genetics and genomics. So genetics would actually be what you inherited from your sire and your dam. So, in cattle, what they're getting from mom and dad. And then genomics is the study of how those sets of genes that they inherited behave and interact to lead to an expressed phenotype in that animal. So the only way that we can get to the genomic piece is through DNA testing and really looking at those large effect genes that we know have an impact on that expressed phenotype. And so we cannot get that information just from looking at the sire and the dam because of inheritance and Mendelian sampling. If you have full brothers and sisters, you know exactly what I mean. You could have the same sire and the same dam, and you look quite different because of the genomics and the study of the genes and how they actually are expressed. So that brings us back to EPDs now that we have our terminology. When we report a calf into an association or when your seed stock provider does that, the association takes half of the breeding value of the sire, half of the breeding value of the dam, and combines them to create the breeding value of your offspring. And this is how we've done EPDs since the inception. And what's fascinating is, coming into 2024 and the technology we have today, that becomes a little bit more complex because in today's 2024 evaluation, we not only incorporate the pedigree and what we know about the sire and the dam, we now add that phenotype information. So since the early 90s, breed associations have been adding actual measurements on the cattle to help estimate the breeding values of those individuals. Now we have genomic information. So that came into the picture in 2009. So when folks start talking about, oh, that DNA, it's still pretty new. Well, 2009, for those of us who are doing the math, that's 15 years ago on a big stage. And genomics has been around a lot longer than that. That is when genomics became commercially available to seed stock producers. And so this combination of all of these factors, including progeny information on that animal, lead to what we call a genomic enhanced EPD. And if you're looking at buying bulls and you are buying bulls that have not been genomically enhanced, I would caution you against that because genomic enhancement means that animal have an increase in accuracy, an increase in confidence into the information that you're using to make that decision that can impact you on that chart for up to 2040. So if we don't have that information, you're taking on more risk as a bull buyer. And I just don't think that that's risk that you should have to take on in today's industry. So this is why that information matters to you. If you tell me that birth weight is very important in your operation and you're looking at bull A versus bull B, Dr. Jamie Corder, who used to work at Neogen Genomics, now she works at University of Missouri, came up with this nice graphic that shows us if the EPD on the bull A and bull B is the same, you might think it doesn't matter whether I buy bull A or bull B. But the truth is, when we look at the accuracy of that EPD, which you can think of accuracy as being confidence, the accuracy on bull A is 0.39. That bull has been genomically enhanced and had an increase in what we know about him versus bull B is at 0.15. If you buy bull B, you are accepting more risk, which is graphed down below in that possible change table, because we don't know whether his birth weight EPD is actually minus 6.3 or 2.9 plus 2.9. Bull A, you have a smaller range, so you're accepting less risk. This kind of rolls us right into dollar indexes because the example I just gave was looking at one specific trait. And what we try to steer you away from is doing, any major purchases by selecting on one thing. So we want to steer you away from that. So associations created dollar indexes, which provides the ability for you to compare animals, because that's all EPDs were ever intended to do, was give us a proxy to be able to compare animals that we want to compare and associate that with a value. And so dollar indexes do exactly that. The American Angus Association does a great job at providing information on their dollar indexes. And if you go back to your breeding objectives that you developed at the beginning of bull sale season, you can align those breeding objectives directly with that dollar index. But you can see that dollar M incorporates calving ease direct, weaning weight, calving ease maternal, milk, maternal weight, docility, heifer pregnancy, claw, and feet angle. It incorporates all of those EPDs into a dollar index that you can think of as profitability for your operation. And so I think that sometimes dollar indexes get a little bit of a short end of the stick when they were really intended to help you compare bull A to bull B with the traits that matter for your breeding objectives and that align with what you want to do. Every association has the ability to look up what their dollar index is, what traits go into their dollar indexes, and I would encourage you to do that depending on the breed of bulls that you want to utilize. Hereford Association takes it a step further. Every association does have examples, by the way, but I found this one to be very dialed in. It provides you with an example of 4 different bulls that you're looking at buying. If each bull produces 25 calves for you each year and you keep that bull for 4 years, this is the dollar value and the difference between the bulls. Once again, that goes back to your breeding objectives. So they have their dollar indexes there. They've spelled this out. If you buy, bull C bull B and compared to daughters of C, they're going to make you an estimated $2,000 more over that distance of 4 years, or $20 per head per year on average. So EPDs are always meant to say on average. But if you look at this as profitability in your pocket, as as that calf cycle's intended to start tightening over the next few years, all of us are looking at profitability, and that starts with our bull purchases. This might be what you see in your inboxes though, which is why I like to use it as a graphic, because sometimes we don't get supplied with all of that information. We have to go seek it out as bull buyers. So when you receive a catalog in the mail, you might see something like this. This is a Sim Angus breeder, and these are actually 2 full siblings. So they're both ET, have the same sire and the same dam. So when they came into the system, if you think about what goes into an EPD, they would have had the same EPDs from their pedigree estimates because they received half of their breeding value from the sire and half from the dam. It wasn't until we incorporated their actual phenotype information along with genomics that we were able to pull these 2 animals apart. And if you look at this and you received this in your inbox, if you were just looking at actual weights and adjusted information on the left, you see that lot 9 and lot 10 were only 3 pounds different at birth. And then on their adjusted weaning weights, once again, 30 pounds difference. Lot 9 has a little bit more growth there. And then at yearling, they're 100 pounds apart now. But if you look at their EPDs and their dollar values, Look at that API, which is Simmental's all-purpose index. It's $153 on lot 9 versus lot 10. It's $180. That's $27 worth of profit on average in a difference on the calves. $27 worth of profit. And I don't say this lightly, that is on average. But this is something that associations do and they do very well, is to take those traits so that we don't single trait select and roll them into a dollar index so that you can talk about this in terms of profitability versus just, in at a weaning weight or an adjusted yearling weight. Now you have more tools at your disposal. This would be a similar situation where we have a pair of full sibling embryo calves from a Hereford outfit. If you look at the Baldy maternal index value, that top bull is 336, that bottom bull is 426. So if I'm buying bulls to retain replacement heifers out of, that bottom bull might be the better investment for me, depending on how much they sell for, of course. If the second bull doesn't fit in my budget, but this takes us back to, do we necessarily have to buy a bull from a certain seed stock provider, or should we start seeking out the genetics that our cows actually need rather than just spending our money at a certain outfit because, we've been friends with them for 20 years? Here would be an Angus example. This one's a little light on the information that they supply. We really have to hunt for more information in the database. And what's fascinating is they only give us the $M value of this bull. So if we were a terminally oriented program, we would have to go look up this bull in the Angus database to find out his other dollar value indexes, which I found fascinating because obviously they might be a more maternally suited seed stock provider. So if I'm someone who's making money off of pounds, then I might want to look at this and try to determine whether this is the correct seed stock provider who's going to really meet the needs of my breeding objectives. I like to put things into perspective by using real world examples. We did an exercise in Big Timber, Montana. This was a real operation. He was a commercial cow-calf producer. He sold all of his calves he didn't sell all of his calves, apologies. He sold calves at weaning, so he makes money by putting pounds on the truck, but he also retained replacement females. So he needed a nice balanced bull purchase that was going to do a little bit of both, recognizing that he was going to sacrifice some pounds of gain to get the maternal characteristics that he really ideally wanted, but that is important to him. And so he asked how EPDs could be used in aligning with his objectives. And when we looked at that, he wanted to buy a Hereford bull. So we went through the Hereford catalog of the seed stock provider that he had chosen, and we dialed it down to these two bulls. So bull A and bull B, he really liked both of them. And when we did, and we looked at the dollar indexes, which aligned with what he wanted, bull B actually made him $4,700 more profit, expected, once again, expected to make him $4,700 more profit across those 4 years. And bull B was also in the top 30% for maternal traits and maternal characteristics when we went and looked that bull up in the Hereford system. And that was a better value of his dollars than he could have spent with bull A. Fascinating. Bull B actually sold for $1,000 less than bull A did because bull A had a little bit more power to him. Probably bull B got a little bit more overlooked, during sale day and folks doing that visual appraisal because he's just not as powerful. But my client didn't need a power bull. My client needed a bull that he could keep replacement heifers out of with confidence that carried those maternal characteristics. So we knew we were sacrificing a little bit on the weaning weight, but we were willing to do that just to gain what we needed in the other areas. This is really close to my heart because this is our actual ranch here, that we're commercial cow-calf producers, my husband and I. And so this is how we make our selection. We actually sell every calf on the place. So every hoof is a terminal, and we purchase our replacement heifers from a seed stock provider. So one of the things that we look at is we have to have that carcass. We have to have, that weaning weight because we're getting paid on the pounds. And we're willing to sacrifice the maternal side. So we mostly look at terminal traits, and we also look at birth weight just because we don't need the dink calves. We don't need the 60-pound calves here in Montana. So we want to have, a nice 75, 80-pound calf so we can take a little bit more on the birth weight. We looked at these two bulls from our seed stock source, got it dialed in. And what was interesting to note is that bull B only had a $9 better than bull A on his terminal index, but span that out once again over 4 years, and we're going to look at a significant difference in that bull battery. Also, bull B was weaning about 20 pounds more of weaning weight than bull A. The reason why we didn't look at what either one of these bulls actually weighed at weaning, which you can see bull B did have a little bit of an advantage, 50 pounds over bull A. That doesn't necessarily correlate to genes that can be passed on to offspring. So we had confidence in that weaning weight EPD, that weaning weight EPD is telling us that those calves out of him on average are going to grow better and yield a heavier weight than bull A. No shade to bull A. That's just how this one shook out. As I mentioned, you have to seek out more information on these bulls than what's supplied in your catalog. Primarily, you very, very rarely see accuracy, which is confidence in the predictions published in a bull sale catalog. And you very rarely, there are a few out there who started doing this, publishing percentile rankings of those individual traits and the indexes. And something to note about those percentile rankings is they are within breed. So within that population of Angus cattle or within that population of Hereford cattle, that animal has been evaluated against the whole and given a percentile rank. In 2024, I ask you this: why would anyone settle for below average? If you only have a certain amount of investment to make in your genetic decisions, why would you choose a bull that ranked in the bottom of the class? I mean, would you ever choose a D or an F student over an A or a B student or even a C student? And the answer is no. You get to vote in the marketplace using your dollars. And seed stock providers sometimes, they say, well, but he's got such an excellent phenotype. You can't overlook him. Like, don't look at those EPDs. That, that stuff doesn't work. And my encouragement to those people is, yes, the bull might have an excellent phenotype, but can he produce an offspring that also matches that and makes you profit and genetic worth of your genetic investment? Or is he just amazing himself? And if you're an NBA fan, that would be like LeBron James and Bronny James. Did the LA Lakers get another LeBron James, or did they just get his offspring? So we can start looking at genetics versus environmental potential. Another thing that you should be focused on is breed associations do a great job of now displaying those percentile rankings when you search an individual animal, as seen here. But if you did have questions, they have full tables that display, the breakdowns of where those different percentile rankings list animals. So every breed has that. Simmental is a multi-breed genetic evaluation. So you have different tables here you can see on the left. So that is ranked against that population of animals. So full blood Simmentals would not be ranked against hybrid, which would be Sim Angus, Simbra. Simbra has their own category over here. So whenever you're looking at those animals from those populations, the percentile rank would actually be against the other animals, making it fair and equitable to the animal being observed and looked at by the buyer. When you compare EPD profiles, that is what EPDs are used for. So in your bull purchasing decisions, I highly encourage you to download all of the bulls that you are looking at purchasing and just take a look at their percentile rankings, their dollar indexes, put them side by side, just like this, so that you could see, in this example, bull A is $51 more in profit on average than bull B. But you can also see that bull A is obviously an AI sire because he has a pretty high confidence in his EPD. And bull B is a little bit lower accuracy, so he's probably more of a yearling bull. Now, will he adapt and gain $50 in profitability? I don't think so. He might gain $10 to $15 in profitability, but he might also go down in profitability being an unproven sire. So this is something to be aware of when you're out there and you're shopping bulls. Comparing apples to apples, it's unfair to compare a proven sire to a yearling bull, because the proven sire is probably being evaluated as an AI bull, and you should compare them against other AI bulls. But it is apples to apples in the fact that they're both being compared against the same population of animals, and this is how they rank. So that's another percentile table for the Hereford. If I have just overwhelmed you today. And this is a lot of information. It's like drinking from a fire hose. If you are a commercial cow-calf producer purchasing seed stock genetics, the best thing that you can do for your operation and to improve genetic progress in your cow herd is actually to crossbreed those animals. And if you're a seed stock producer on this webinar, I would say that that's something that, commercial producers, it's been proven time and time again that that hybrid vigor adds that punch. It adds some pounds at weaning, which most of us get paid on. It also impacts our stability, fertility, and health metrics on our animals. And so finding a seed stock source that can provide you with genetics that complement your cow herd. So if you have a mostly Angus-based cow herd, seeking out the breeds that mate really well and complement for those deficiencies, such as Simmental, Hereford, some Charolais genetics, Wagyu, whatever it is your end product is, and what you have in your mind that you want to breed for based upon those breeding objectives. Really putting that complementarity into effect, you can take advantage of that as a commercial producer. If you're a registered seed stock producer, you have to stay within breed at times unless your breed allows for hybrids to be registered. And so if you're a purebred Angus, purebred Hereford, purebred Simmental, seeking out those genetics that are real outcrosses and utilizing genomics to find that genomic relatability so that you can get that punch and that injection of those outcross genetics and truly make genetic progress within your herds is also key to success. So this all comes back to the genetic investment that you're making today is so vitally important. Like the bulls that we are going to sell in 2026 are already in the bellies. In the spring of 2026, those are already in the bellies of our cows. Those decisions have already been made. So when I bring folks on to talk to them about genetic progress and benchmarking and the tools that we can utilize in your operations, and we start visiting about these things of like those genetic decisions have already been made. Like that's done. That's in the cooker. What can we do differently starting in 2028, 2027? And folks, like it starts to dawn on us that we're at the mercy of our genetic intervals and how long our gestation length is. So we really need to be thinking in terms of where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 10 years? And aligning ourselves with seed stock providers that will get us there in the fastest, most efficient way possible, while also utilizing the tools at our disposal to make well-informed decisions that take us away from emotional decisions in an auction barn where you just got beat out by your neighbor on bull A. So you might as well try on bull B because gosh dang it, he's not going to show you who's boss. And that's how we get ourselves in trouble and sometimes set ourselves back is we let our emotions take over on our decision making and we end up with something that's really not potentially the best, wisest investment we could have made. So with all these tools and the market that we're looking at, in 2024 and how expensive everything has gotten, is there ways that we can make decisions differently that will have that lasting impact and really bring home some ROI for us? And even if it's within our own cow herd, if we sell at the sale barn, so we're at the mercy of where the market's at on that day, and we say, gosh, Leoma, I can't afford to spend $6,000 on a bull because I don't really get paid on that for the calves I'm selling. Well, let's think about the cows that you're keeping. Like, let's think about that piece. What is that investment worth for you? And can we make genetic progress on the cow side that really displays that investment you made on that bull purchase? So with that, Bren, I'm sure we have questions out there. I talked pretty fast, but I think that they recorded this so that we can go back and watch. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, yeah. So we'll give everyone like a minute or two to submit all their questions down in the chat box. Yes, we did record this webinar, so we will upload it to our YouTube channel, and then everyone who attended today will receive a link to go back and have access to your slides and the recordings. So we'll send it out to everyone.
That was a lot of information, wasn't it, Bren?
It was great information. I feel like I always take something away every month from all the webinars and the guest speakers we have. So yeah, no, this was great today. Chat box. You know, would you, while I'm thinking of it, would you mind elaborate? So I feel like people have difference of opinions on EPDs. Um, do you, what are your thoughts on using them or not using them? Like, do you think it really makes or breaks it, or can you kind of elaborate more on your thoughts with EPDs?
So I love this question. Um, because Donald Brown said something that really stuck with me from R.A. Brown Ranch, and I use it in some of my presentations, is no one is telling you that you have to change, right? So no one is sitting there saying you have to do this, but you will have to compete against those who do.
Mhm.
And as our industry continues to consolidate, is what it's doing. And you see supply chains being formed, Bren. I would say that utilizing EPDs as a tool in your toolbox to make genetic progress is imperative for every operation. Even if you really evaluate animals with your eye,
Mhm.
as I mentioned, why are we still saying it's okay to keep a female that's in the bottom 90th percentile for maternal traits? Like, why is that a thing? Yes, we can breed her out of it. So, I mean, we can use sires but to your question, I think that utilizing EPDs as a tool is important. I do not think it's a silver bullet. I do not think that genomics are a silver bullet. There is no way I could snap my fingers and just, create the magic animal. But this is a vehicle that helps us get where we're going and impacts your profitability. So that's my best answer for you, is like I said, no one is telling you have to use these, but why would we not? Like,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, it just,
And
I don't know.
and
Like,
since
why
you
would we
have
not factor this into our decision making?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And since you have an EPD pulled up, would you mind, and we don't have to go through every single
Yeah.
column, but for someone who's never seen an EPD, could you kind of walk us through, what numbers you want high, what numbers you want low, kind of what the acronyms are on an EPD and what a producer might be wanting to look at to make sure that the EPD does match correctly with their herd?
So every operation is going to be different. That's my original stressor for you, is aligning what's important to you, Bren, and choosing your top 3, top 4 things that I call them. They're your non-negotiables. I'm
Mhm.
not willing to negotiate on these 4 things. Like, this is imperative to my operation. And then we hone in on what EPD matches up to those 4 things. So I'll just pick on one. Like, when you asked about numbers, percentile ranking on every trait except for birth, typically you want in the high percentile. Uh, so think of it as when a student performs in a classroom, they're in the top 1% of the class. Like, that's an elite student. When they're in
Mhm.
the bottom 99th percent, they're struggling a little bit, right? Like, less desirable student. It's the same in bulls. And so think of it that way, top 1%ers. Now, not everyone can be in the top 1%. And not everyone wants the top 1%, because life is a world of give and trade. So if you can be in the top 25%, because these traits are all correlated. So that's why I say pick your 4 non-negotiables, because maybe they're in the top. In this example, you can see that bull, this top bull is in the top 4% for weaning, and the bottom bull is in the top 5%. There's very little difference in these two for that trait. But if we go over to maybe something else that's really important to me, is marbling. Look at the marbling difference, Bren. Like, we have a top 2% and then we have a 65th percentile. And so that's where, single trait selection can really lead us down the wrong path, because
Mhm.
maybe that doesn't go with our non-negotiables. So you want to look for top percentile performers, except birth weight. So birth weight, it's reversed. And
Right.
when I say that, this minus 0.9 is in the top 10%, and then the 4.4 is in the bottom 99th percentile. So the bigger the birth weight, the less desirable that bull comes for most
Mhm.
operations. Now, if you're in North Dakota or you're in Canada, they love that plus. They're not scared. They're like, give us that +6 bull. Like, we can take it. Um, And so if you don't know what the EPDs necessarily correspond to or how they're developed, I would encourage you to go to that Beef Breed Association website. Every breed has a breakdown of what these acronyms mean, you know, to your point, how are they developed, what goes into them, and how can we use them as producers to make educated decisions.
Right. So it looks like we don't have any more questions.
Oh my gosh, we have no questions.
I know you did a great job of explaining everything. No one had any questions. But I will make this comment. If you do have any questions that you think of, please feel free to email us at education@tscra.org, and we will make sure we get those sent over to Leoma and help you out with any questions that y'all may have in the future. So with that, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for joining us today, Leoma, and we look forward to seeing everyone on our November Ranching 101 webinar, where we will discuss nutrition. So we look forward to seeing you all then. Y'all have a great
Thank you
afternoon.
for having me, Bren. Thank you everyone for listening, and please reach out with questions because I hope that you will have some.
Yes, absolutely. Y'all have a good one. Thanks.